Today, we're going to be learning why on earth you would ever want to do JavaScript. Let's do it. I want to deal with a question that I get asked a lot, which is, why JavaScript? Now, we put the emphasis on JavaScript moving into the second semester, and the reason why is because a lot of people find it to be one of the more unfamiliar aspects of building web applications compared to HTML and, say, CSS. Now, this assumes that you know a little bit about HTML and you know a little bit about CSS, but you might not be that comfortable with JavaScript. So again, we ask the question, well, why do we need JavaScript? And the reason why is because HTML and CSS alone, there are things that it cannot do. Number one, it can't change the actual content of a page, which is something very, very necessary when you get into building applications or even dynamic websites. Secondly, it can't perform logic. And these are the things that JavaScript is there to do for us. So what do we mean by the fact, by saying that HTML and CSS can't change the page? Well, obviously it seems like they can. If I create more HTML, it changes the page. If I do some styles via JavaScript, it changes the page. But what I mean by this is that those kind of changes aren't really changes to the content of the page. They change the look, they change the feel, they can change the style of the thing, but they can't actually change the actual content of the page. And this is something that's really, really needed. So consider a scenario, for instance, where your user needs to log in order to use your thing. Maybe it's behind a paywall, or you're just trying to build a large base of users and so forth. And you need to show them whether they're logged in or not. So let's actually build a really simple version of that scenario right now, and you'll start to see the role of JavaScript in this whole scenario. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into CodePen here, and you can see what I have up right now that I'm working on, which is our crowdfunding campaign. And we're going to be actually building something like this, so I'm pretty excited about that. But to start off with, let's dive into a new pen. So I'm going to go into CodePen here. And I'll just fire up a new pen. Now, in this course, we are writing ES6 or ES 2015 JavaScript, which is the actual, new official standard for JavaScript. And we want to be learning the latest and greatest, so let's get on that. So fortunately, if you click on the settings up here, CodePen has built in the Babel processor for JavaScript. What that's going to do for you is that if someone comes to your application in a browser that does not support some of the features of ES6 yet, even though they're working on updating all the browsers, but let's say they're on an older browser or they work somewhere where browsers just haven't been updated yet, the Babel preprocessor is going to take your ES6 JavaScript and turn it into a version of JavaScript that they can view. It may not be quite as performant, but it should work just fine. And for what we're doing, it should be no trouble at all. So we're going to go ahead and turn that on. And so now we've got our HTML, we've got our CSS, and our Babel-enabled JavaScript over here. I'm going to go ahead and start building a small little toolbar just to illustrate what we're talking about here. So I'll go into the HTML. I'm going to make a section to start off with. Section, there we go. And I'm going to give it an attribute. I'm going to call it toolbar. Now, attributes are one of the cool ways that we can create our selectors here. They're very, very flexible. So I'm going to do this a little bit differently than you might have done in the past. I'm not using an ID or a class here. Instead, I'm going to use an attribute. We'll get into why we want to do that. Now, down in the CSS, some of the things we've already dealt with, like doing a little CSS reset here. first thing I'm going to do is turn off the margins, and I'll turn off the padding just to get those out of the way. There we go. And yeah, I'm going to need a couple more things as well. So let me create a selector for the section, and now we can see with the square brackets I can select the sections that have this attribute applied to them. All right. So inside of here, I'm going to give it a width of 100%, and I'll give it a height. I'm going to say 64 pixels, which is a pretty good size that will work well on touch-enabled devices. If the person's tapping, you need to give them a large enough hit zone that they can tap well. I'll set a background. Now we don't see anything yet inside of it, but we're going to go back to the HTML and we're going to put a little H2 inside of there. Last thing I'm going to do is give it a position fixed, because this is going to be one of those kind of floating toolbars that, you know, we've done this a couple of times now, but now we're revisiting it with a slightly different perspective. We're going to look at the role of JavaScript inside of here. Okay, let me go back up into my section. I'll throw a little H2 action in here. And I'll give it a simple message just to say, you are logged in. Okay. Now let's head on back down to the CSS, because we don't really see anything yet, but the reason why is because we haven't set a color. So let's select that H2, and we're going to say color white. So boom, there it is. And I'm going to push it off to the right, so I can do that very simply with a float. We could do it with the flex box as well, but we're just keeping this really simple. And then let's push it down a little bit, maybe using a padding top. Something like that. Not too bad. Push it over from the right a little bit, the same trick. Okay, so now we've got a nice little toolbar going on here that indicates if the person's logged in or not. But what if they're not logged in? You know? So what if you need to do something like this, right? In order to let the person know that they need to log in. And then once they log in, how are you going to let them know that? How are you going to update the screen? This is where things get a little tricky if you're trying to build your thing just with HTML and CSS. So let's do a small little example in JavaScript to see how JavaScript helps us to accomplish this. So I'm going to go down into the JavaScript box here, and I'm going to use a word called let logged in status equal false. Okay, so this is me saying that by default, I'm going to assume that the person is not logged in. Now, the JavaScript that we've just written, this logged in status is called a variable, and we're going to get into variables quite a bit more. There are really only two ways that JavaScript does its job. The first way is that it remembers things for us, and the second way is that it can change the things that it remembers. So what I've done here is say, I want you to remember that the person is not logged in. And the way that you'll remember that is through this little variable. I could have called this variable anything, but generally you want to call it something that makes sense. So I'm going to say logged in status. So let's keep going. We're going to get deeper on variables presently, but I want to show how JavaScript lets us do something that HTML and CSS alone won't allow us to do. Okay, so that was step one, where we say, remember if the person is logged in. Okay, now the second part of it is going to be to update the screen if the person is logged in or not. Okay, but we don't necessarily need to update the entire screen. So for instance, the toolbar up here, we don't really need to change that. We basically just need to change this H2. And in fact, we don't even need to change the entire H2. All we really want to change is this little word right here, which should basically appear or not appear depending on if the person's logged in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make use of a handy little element called a span, which I'm going to put around this word, just like that. Spans don't really do anything, they don't change anything, but they do allow us to create a selector for a specific portion of our page. So inside, I'm going to give this an ID as well, which I'll just call logged in. Sorry, not an ID, an attribute. I like to use attributes when I'm coding JavaScript here. Okay. So now back down to our JavaScript. Let's do something. We're going to make another variable called the logged in view. And we are going to set that by using something called the query selector, which is a really excellent way of creating a selector using JavaScript. And it actually allows us to create our selector in a very similar way to the way that we would do it in CSS. So for me to target that particular span that I want to update, my selector is going to look like the way that we created the selector for this toolbar section right here. First off, I'm going to say, give me the spans, and I'm going to say refine that to the span that has the logged in attribute. Okay. So again, we're saying, you know, JavaScript, I want you to remember this span right here. And the reason, you know, the way we're indicating that it should remember that particular span is we have set it inside this variable called the logged in view. Okay, so this is what I was saying. JavaScript now has the ability to remember if the person's logged in, and it can also remember a part of the view, a part of this page, where it indicates if the person's logged in or not. So now we get down to the other thing that JavaScript can do for us, which is to apply some logic. All right? So take a look at this. I'm going to say if not logged in status and here's the part where we actually change the screen. So remember what I said, it just remembers things and it changes the things that it can remember. Well, we're remembering the logged in view, which is this span. So now we're going to change it. We can do that because we have that particular span recorded inside of a variable. So I'm going to say logged in view dot inner HTML, which is a method that allows us to actually change the text inside of this element. So in here, I'm saying that the person is not logged in. I got me a bug. Let's take a look here. I'm going to go to the inspector, bring up the console. All right, let me reload this page here. What's going on? Oh, you know what? I am missing the closing to my span. There we go. That would definitely cause some problems. Typo. All right, great. Okay, back to our JavaScript. I've said If I remember that the person is not logged in, then let them know they're not logged in. But what if they are logged in? Well, we can create an else to our if here, which is basically us saying, like, if that first thing wasn't the case, do this other thing. So in here, I can say logged in view dot inner HTML equals, and I'll just make it blank. I'm just going to erase it because I'm basically only telling the person if they're not logged in. Okay? Now let's see if this worked. Let's go up to our logged in status, and now we're going to change it so that the person is logged in. Make it true. And see what happened inside of our view there? Now it's saying that they are logged in. Change it back to false. Boom, showing them that they're not logged in. A very, very handy thing to be able to do, don't you think? Okay, so this really illustrates the rule of JavaScript inside of here. What do? Well, we created a variable, which is us saying, hey, JavaScript, remember this important thing. We changed something in one of our variables, namely the text that was inside of our span here. And this is the second role of JavaScript, where it's able to actually change the properties of the thing that it's remembering. And then the third part of it was we performed some logic here. We used a keyword called if and another one called else. And this is part of the simple way that JavaScript is able to do a little bit of decision making here. In this case, the decision making is based around whether the person's logged in or not. So we're going to go a lot deeper with this stuff. But what I want to encourage you to do is to experiment. You want to be always trying these little things like this. But in order to cut down the amount of thrashing around that you might do, in the next video I want to talk about the way that a well-made application is structured. And if you can conceptually understand that structure, you will vastly accelerate your progress in learning to make applications and doing JavaScript. And it's not too difficult. And as we move forward in this course, we're going to keep referring back to this common structure that's over time has been proven to be very, very good structure for building applications. So look forward to the next video. Do feel free to fire me any questions and to try out this code yourself. I hope that you will enjoy your first jump into doing some ES6 style JavaScript.